How did the Hyksos period change Egyptian military organization and foreign policy? The Hyksos period. So, Egypt around 1800 BC, around that time, maybe 1700 BC, probably somewhere around 1800 BC, was gradually invaded by a bunch of people who came from God knows where, who came from what is present in the region of Israel. Let's once again go to the maps. Okay, maps. And let's see where is Egypt and where is Israel today. So we have Egypt here. We know where Cairo is in the pyramids. Now, if you go to the northeast of that, you have the Sinai region, and beyond that, you have Egypt, Lebanon, all of that. And north of that, you have Syria and Anatolia, which is present day, currently occupied by Turkey. So the Hyksos people, they came from this region, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, that region, and they gradually encroached into Egypt and eventually conquered Egypt. And they ruled Egypt for about a century and a half. So initially they made some small settlements in the Egypt region, and the Egyptians, the Egyptian kingdom was not very powerful. At that time, Egypt had a very isolationist policy. Egypt only focused on national defense, just like India today. Today, India's military is all about defense. You don't hit sixes, you just block the ball, right? That's India's military policy since 1947. Keep defending. Until the 1990s, India was completely isolated, just like North Korea. Indians had no idea what was happening outside. Egypt at this time was just like that, completely isolated from the world and a completely defensive policy. Because of that, the Hyksos came in and encroached into Egypt and settled down, and they set up cities and all that. Eventually, one of the Hyksos kings, he sent a letter to the Egyptian king, whose capital city was like 100 kilometers away. And the Hyksos king, whose capital, so the two cities are about 100 or so kilometers away from each other. The Hyksos king sends a letter to the king of Egypt saying that you have a big pool with hippopotamuses in your city, and the splashing of the hippopotamuses in your city is preventing me from sleeping. So do something about it. It was an insult, obviously, right? So the Egyptian king, instead of taking that action, he went with his army and marched on the Hyksos territory, and there was a battle. What was the name of the Egyptian king? Let's Google that. Yeah, let's Google this. Last Egyptian king before Hyksos period. What was his name? His name was Senekeretao. Let's take a look at what this gentleman looks like. Mummy. Trigger warning, not pretty. Let's take a look at his mummy. See, it's gonna say that. Why is this blanked out? Turn safe search off. All right, there we have it. That's what his mummy looks like. So he went to battle against the Hyksos, and this is what happened to him. As you can see, the instruments that were used were battle axes. So the Hyksos, they brought in new technology into Egypt. What are the technologies the Hyksos brought into Egypt that the Egyptians did not have? First of all, the Hyksos brought in war chariots, two-wheeled chariots. What kind of chariot? Chariot drawn by horses. And the chariot would have two people. One was the person driving the chariot. The other was the warrior. So you would have a Sarathi and you would have a Maharathi. What weapons did the Maharathi use? He used a composite bow. Not a standard bow, a composite bow. What does a composite bow look like? Let me show you what a composite bow looks like. Lord Rama bow. What does a composite bow look like? This is what a composite bow looks like. Okay? This is the shape of a composite bow. This is the shape of a composite bow. The Hyksos brought in the composite bow. They brought in the Rath, they brought in the Sarathi, they brought in the Maharathi. The Maharathi would have a composite bow, he would also have a spear. Another weapon that Hyksos brought in was the Parashu, which is the battle axe made of copper. What was the Hyksos religion? Their main god was a thunder god and a storm god. Today's European historians will identify him with the Semitic god Baal. The Hyksos also, is that true? I'm not sure about that. Is that correct? I'm not sure about that. The Hyksos also performed horse sacrifices. The Hyksos came from the region where you would eventually have the Mitanni and Hittite empires. The Mitanni and Hittite empires were ruled by people who spoke Sanskrit, by the way. Anyway, these are all circumstantial connections. The Europeans will say that the Hyksos were Semitic people. So the Hyksos came in, they defeated the Egyptians, and they ruled Egypt for about 100-150 years. Eventually, the Egyptians were able to take over again, and you had the New Kingdom of Egypt, which was the greatest, glorious period of Egyptian history ever. You had Akhenaten, you have Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh, you had Tutankhamun, and so on. The greatest, most glorious period of Egyptian history. And if you look at their historical records that they wrote from the time, they speak very bitterly of the Hyksos occupation. They speak about the century of humiliation. And after the Hyksos were defeated, Egypt, which formerly had this isolationist foreign policy, suddenly became an expansionist kingdom. And they used the memory of the century of humiliation to justify their expansionism. Does it remind you of China? I keep saying to you all, history is cyclical. History occurs in cycles. Well, there you have it. So that's kind of how it was, okay? And yeah, it also changed Egypt's military organization. The Egyptian New Kingdom adopted all of the technology, all of the tactics, all of the strategies, all of the organization, everything that the Hyksos brought in. And that made them a formidable power in West Asia. Right, okay.